Hey guys, how's it going? This is Chappie with Intent Cycles, and today is a special day. We are going to unbox our very first Intent e-bike. So this is the Tazer, and let's get rolling. Let's crack this bad boy open and get ready to go ride. Well, as you see here, there's a little identification. So here's your toolkit, user manual, and accessories. This will have all the important information and documents on the bike, as well as your toolkit. So that'll have your torque wrench and your shock pump. And then over here, you'll have your quick start guide. This quick start guide is all the basic steps you need to basically get the bike from the box to riding condition. So there is a user manual as well that goes a little bit more in depth on torque values for frame assembly and things like that. But this is a nice little handy just quick start guide that simplifies things. So let's go ahead and get started. So you see when we open the box, each major packaging component will be labeled. So we'll pull everything out starting with one, and then when we would go to repack this bike down the future, we would start at the highest number and work our way back to one. Pull our rear wheel stabilizer number 2 out. Front wheel stabilizer number 3 out. And then next we'll pull our wheels out. Got our rear wheel. We'll go ahead and set this off to the side for the moment. And then our front wheel. All right, and so up by the fork, we'll pull out this little box. This box will contain your battery charger for your specified country, as well as the keys, as you'll see in this small bag with the chain guide spare parts. Inside this bag is a battery strap. So I'll show you later on how to install this as we install the battery into the frame. Next step is we're going to get the dropper post up so we have something to mount our bike into our bike stand. So pull your handlebar number 7 out, go on to the left hand side of the bar, pull the tabs, and we'll go ahead push the dropper button so the dropper post comes up as you see there, and we'll go ahead set this gently off to the side. And then next thing's next, we pull this beauty out. And there we go. So now with the bike in the stand, I want to take time to note a couple things. No matter what bike stand you use, it's really important you do not clamp onto the carbon surface in any way. And when you use a bike stand, be sure it's a high quality bike stand with a nice rubber insulation so we don't scratch up the seat posts. If you're worried about it, please put a towel there. Do everything you can to protect your brand new bike. So one thing to note with the battery is be sure to keep your packaging. If you do any type of traveling, it cannot go in a passenger plane, but it can fly cargo. So if you travel anywhere, you're able to repackage in this box. So now that our box is empty, I'm going to slide this over to the side, and we're going to go ahead and start taking all the protective packaging off the bike. Everything's tabbed and grooved so it stays nice and secure. This is our down tube protection. Pull our handlebar protection off. Personally, I like to leave the fork protector on until we get the handlebars mounted, just so we don't scratch the surface of the fork or the bars itself. Number 10, which is our axle locator, and it also protects the derailleur in transit as well. With these zip ties, you can cut them with a knife, but I highly recommend using a good set of cable cutters so we don't scratch our beautiful new frame. And slide that off. So first things first is we're going to throw our derailleur on using a 5mm wrench. So carefully start the thread of the derailleur into the derailleur hanger. So one thing to note with the Shimano derailleur is you'll see this little dimple right here, this little nub. This nub is going to sit on the back of our derailleur hanger. So we get the thread started, and we make sure that dimple is above the flat surface of the derailleur hanger. So get it to where it's almost snug, let the derailleur drop so it contacts on that surface, and then we can go ahead and torque our derailleur onto our derailleur hanger. You see when it comes packaged, we have the stem facing rearward. So the first thing we're going to do is flip that sucker around, and then we're going to go ahead and pull this faceplate of the stem off. One thing I want to note is on these stem clamp bolts, you'll see these small washers. It's a locking washer, so just be sure when you're pulling the bolts off that you keep those washers in, they don't fall and get lost. So we're going to arrange our cables properly. I'm going to rotate the bar into the proper mounting position. We're going to set our faceplate on there with our Sacred Heart logo, of course facing the right way. I'd say go about 6 turns in to get it started. So now that we have these 4 bolts roughly 6 turns in, we want to pay attention to these gray hash marks on either side of the stem clamp and make sure we're nice and even left to right. Then we'll just gently snug our bolts down. So now that we have our handlebars roughly mounted, we're going to go ahead and pull the protection off our fork. Now we'll pull the covers off of the controls as well as the grip protectors. All right, so now that we have the bars set up, all the packaging off the bike, we're going to go ahead and hook up the electrical system. So the first thing we're going to do is go into our accessory box. We're going to pull out our little special tool. It's a TLEW02. This is specifically for hooking up the cables to the back of the head unit, as well as to the drive unit and to the button as well. So we're going to use that tool. We're going to use the installation side, so this will be the side that's basically the shape of a C with the slot in it. So that slot, we are going to come over here with our cable. As you see here, this is the cable running from the battery and drive unit on the down tube. We're going to slide the cable into the slot and gently tug until it's in its resting spot. With this in place, we're going to come up to our head unit and we're going to start at the clamp. You see the clamp here. We're going to go to not the first hole, but we're going to go to the second open hole right here. So in that second hole, we're going to take our cable and we're going to slide it into that porthole. And then we're just going to apply light pressure until we hear a slight click. All right, so the final step of assembly is we're going to install the wheels. So come over, since we've been on the front, we're going to go ahead and take your number 5, our front wheel. We're going to undo the flaps from the spokes. Then we're going to pull our hub protectors off. You see they'll be on both sides. Typically, the hub adapters do not come off with these, but there is a chance they might, so always check your hub protectors before throwing them away. I like to keep these for shipping and traveling as well. So now that we have our wheel with us, we're going to go ahead undo the rubber band that's holding our pad spacer in place. We're going to go ahead and set our pad spacer off to the side. We'll keep that also for shipping and storage. We're going to undo our axle on the non-drive side. We're going to align our front wheel starting with our rotor inside of the pads, and then we're going to work our way up to get the hub to line up with the inside surfaces of the fork. Once they line up, you should be able to slide it right in like so. Once you get it slid in, we'll just go ahead and turn our axle in, and then we'll tighten her down. So one thing to note when we tighten our axle up is it's a cam lever system. So we want to make sure it's either straight up or straight back. So just like the front, we're going to go ahead and pull the flaps off of the spoke. I'm going to come over to our cassette protector, number 6. Flip it around. We're going to go ahead and pull our hub protection off on both sides. To go along with the wheel installation prep, we're going to go ahead and take a look at our derailleur here. It should come shipped locked, but we want to unlock it. Next thing, I'm going to come up just like the front. We're going to pull our pad spacer out, and we're using our 5mm to loosen our locking axle. We're going to spin clockwise, go until we feel it free out. We'll pull our wrench out, take a hold of our chain so it doesn't drop and scratch any of the frame. Slide the axle out, gently set our chain back down. We're going to go ahead and take our rear wheel, partially and carefully slide the rear wheel up into the rear triangle. We're going to pull or push our derailleur cage down and pull the derailleur back. line the chain up with the smallest gear on the cassette. We're gonna line up the rotor with the rear brake pads. Once we get it, it should slide right into place. We'll take our axle, our locking axle, from the non-drive slide, slide it in through the hub towards the drive side. And you'll hear it hit the derailleur hanger, and that's good, that's what we want. And then we want to go ahead and start the axle from the non-drive side by hand so we don't risk any cross-threading. We're going to stick our wrench into the 6mm broach. We're now going to tighten in a counterclockwise direction. All right, so now that we have our Tazer out of the box, we're going to go ahead and get the battery charge started. Make sure this guy's ready to go when our bike's ready. I'm going to pull it out of the special packaging. It's always a good idea to throw it back in the box, and you'll also need this to ship the battery anywhere. So be sure, it's real important that you hold on to this. Pull this protective tape off. The next box we're going to open is the charger. We're going to find our keys. And on the key, there's a couple bits of information that will point out, and it's also pointed out in the user manual. You're going to find the battery strap. So this just simply aids in the removal of the battery once it's in the bike. All right, so we have our battery strap. So we're going to go ahead, slide the big opening. No need to go crazy with this, just about 1/2 inch underneath the Shimano logo, as so. We are going to pull the charger out packaging and plug this sucker right into the wall. And we're going to take the lead cable, come over to the back of the battery. We're just going to line up just like that. Give it light, firm push, plug it right in, easy as that, and off we go. From about this point to fully charge, it'll take about 5 hours to complete. So now we have our fully charged battery. We're going to go ahead and get this puppy installed. Just pull it back, pull it out. You'll see that there'll be a gasket around the frame, and there's a nice big positive flap to engage with the bottom. There's one important engagement point on the back of the battery, and that's this slot you see right here. This slot is going to line up with the tab that you see right here. If that's lined up properly, our plug is going to be in full contact and good connection. And just slowly slide it in place, making sure everything feels good and snug. And then all it's going to take from this point on is just a light push. Slide that tab down into the bottom of the down tube, line it up, just push it in place. We're going to go ahead and make sure our stem is straight and our handlebars are where we want them. There's many ways to go about straightening the stem. My personal preference is lining up the bottom or back of the bar with the front of the crown of the fork. So we're going to make sure our headset preload is about 2 Newton meters. Just go by feel. So one of the best ways to do that for me personally is I like to just let the bars slide side to side. If it's not dropping away, like if it were to drop away as I'm throwing it, then it's too loose. If it stops before it gets there, it's just right. So that to me looks a little on the loose side, so I'm gonna give her just a little bit more sauce. And there we go. That's a little bit more what I'm looking at. I'm gonna take her 5mm T-handle or Y-wrench, just lightly snug. Everybody's control setup is different. Everybody likes a little bit something different. So you'll see on the back of our bars, we have hash marks. So it makes it real easy to set each side up symmetrically. All right, so now we're at the point where we're comfortable with all our controls. Everything's nice and even, straight, happy with it. We're gonna go ahead and put the Tazer back up in the stand. All right, so in our fancy little accessory box, we'll go ahead and open this up. Right in the front, lower area of our box, we're gonna find our torque wrench. We're gonna grab, starting with a 5mm. All right, so starting from the back to the front, we're going to set torque on all the bolts that we use during the installation process of the bike. This bolt torque rating is 8 to 10 Newton meters. The axle is set at 11 Newton meters, so we're gonna go ahead and jump this up and go in a counterclockwise motion. And that bolt is set at 14 Newton meters. In this case, we're going to be going clockwise. The next set of bolts we touched were these 5mm bolts for the steer tube or the stem clamp. So as you can see here, etched on here is 8 Newton meters. Bring one side up to torque, 8 Newton meters, 8, and 8. So these, just like the back bolts of the stem, are etched, as you can see here, and they're set to 6 Newton meters. So we're going to go ahead in a star pattern, tighten this down to 6 Newton meters. The only other bolts that we've touched during the assembly process is our lever bolts and control bolts. Typically, any control, bar mounted control, is anywhere between 4 to 5 Newton meters of torque. Alright, so there you have it. We've done the major assembly of the bike. At this point, the only other things left to do is install our pedals, set sag up, and do the initial startup of our E8000 series Shimano drive system. And we'll cover that in the next video. So for now, let your battery charge overnight, get ready for the day, and then we'll move on to the final setup. Stoked to have you on board Intense, and enjoy the Tazer as much as we have.